flooding in Kenya. I'm curious if there's any relief that's planned from the administration and whether it's affecting plans for the state visit later this month.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. So obviously we extend our deepest condolences to the families, loved ones, and communities who have been impacted by the catastrophic flooding in East Africa, obviously not just Kenya, over the past month. The U.S. is supporting some response efforts, particularly through the U.S. Agency of International Development, USAID, Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance. For example, in Kenya, USAID has provided $600,000 to Kenya Red Cross Society, the government of Kenya's lead responder for emergency flood response. That's in addition to more than $40 million that USAID has provided to humanitarian organizations in Kenya, who also have flexibility to respond to the current floods this year. So we continue to offer our continued and resolute support to all who have been impacted and are closely monitoring the situation. We do not see this impacting the state visit, as you just mentioned, on May 23rd, but we're going to continue to offer our assistance and support. Good.
Thank you, Karine. The president, in less than 3 weeks, is going to be delivering commencement addresses at both Morehouse and West Point. What sort of environment is the White House preparing for the president to encounter there?
So when you speak about environment, security, or anything like that, that's something for the Secret Service to speak to. I can't speak to that. What I can say is the president is very much looking forward to speaking to graduates.
What mood does he expect to encounter on campus?
What
I know
mood?
you can't talk about.
Well, I mean, look, I don't want to get into hypotheticals here. The president is hoping to encounter and deal with and see family members and students who are thrilled and excited to be celebrating an important day. He's going to be celebrating that day with them, talking about their future, hoping to deliver remarks that hit home for these graduates and their families. It's a special day. It's a special day. And so he's looking forward to doing that. He did two commencement speeches last year, two before then, before 2023, obviously. And so this is something that he looks forward to doing. I can't speak to the mood. I can't speak to security situation. I can't speak to that. I can't get into hypotheticals. I can speak to how important that moment is going to be, and the president certainly looks forward to it.
But is it the White House's expectation that some of the current frustration on campus will have subsided by that time? And if so,
yeah,
why?
I don't have a crystal ball to look into the future. I just don't. That is not something that I have the ability of doing. What I can say is this is an important day. This is an important month. Yes, graduation month, but an important day for these graduates. And he's, as the president tends to do when he speaks at graduation, he's going to meet the moment.
And just to follow up on the question about some of the reports from police that the protesters that were arrested in New York were not students. Yesterday, John Kirby said that there was no intelligence to support the idea that there were bad actors involved in some of these protests. Does the intelligence still support that?
I'm just going to be really mindful. I'm just not going to speak to that. There's local enforcement, law enforcement on the ground, so I will speak to that. I think what I can say more broadly, this is a painful moment, and we understand that for many communities, and we know that these kinds of charged moments pose challenges for law enforcement, and the president continues to believe, as I've said multiple times, that Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law. That is their right. It is part of our freedoms here in America, and at the same time, we are going to condemn anti-Semitism. We believe that is hate speech. It is abhorrent, and we're going to continue to condemn that.
Well, with that said, I mean, does the president believe New York Mayor Adams and leaders of Columbia University and City College of New York acted appropriately by having the protesters at those colleges arrested and their encampments forcibly shut down?
That is a decision for colleges and universities to decide on. The law enforcement, if you think about local law enforcement, they know what's going on the ground. They have a better sense of what's going on the ground, and obviously they have to make decisions. We are talking about protecting students and making sure that they feel safe on campus. We're talking about a small group of students who are disrupting that ability for students to have that academic experience. That's what we're talking about here. We believe, and I will continue continue to say this. Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law. That is incredibly important. And we also have to condemn hate. We have to condemn anti-Semitism. That is something that this president believes. We also understand, as I just stated to your colleague, that many communities, this is a painful time and is a very charged environment, charged moments. When you see those type of charged moments, they do pose challenges for law enforcement. But that is their decision to make.
Well, when we look nationwide, all these protests erupting at college campuses, has the response, been the appropriate response, or has it been, too harsh?
So look, there's going to be local investigations. There's going to be cases on this, and I don't want to get ahead of that. I can't go into every case here. What I can say is, in these charged moments, we understand how difficult it is. We understand how painful it is in this moment, and how because of those charged moments, it can be challenging for law enforcement. At the same time, students have to be allowed, Americans have to be allowed to peacefully protest. That is important. That is part of our freedoms here in America. We got to make sure that we continue to say that. We believe in this administration that we have to continue to say that and call out any anti-Semitism that we see. It is dangerous. It is abhorrent. We got to call that out. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. On a different topic, would the president encourage Democrats to help protect Speaker Johnson from being ousted from his role if Marjorie Taylor Greene were to make good on her threat to reform next week?
We've been very clear when it comes to internal leadership discussions in Congress. We just do not get involved. That is for Democratic leadership to speak to. That's not something we get involved in.
Thanks, Karine. I'm wondering if the White House has any response to the reports of violent clashes on UCLA's campus last night, that there was a group of counter-protesters that tried to forcibly dismantle the pro-Palestine encampment and the clash that resulted afterwards.
So look, what I can say more broadly, any form of violence we are going to denounce, we're going to call out. Violent rhetoric, any type of violence, we have to call out. That doesn't change anything. We're going to continue to do that. Okay.
Yeah, on that trip to North Carolina, does the president plan to visit the victims of Charlotte's mass shooting?
Don't have anything to share at this time. We'll have more later. Go ahead, John.
Just to follow
Fair
up with that question.
Yeah. Which one, North Carolina?
North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, North Carolina. So already on the schedule is the visit to Wilmington, North Carolina. It's expected that the president will also travel to Charlotte as well. Has the president reached out to the families of those law enforcement individuals who were killed in that tragic incident?
So here's what I will say. I don't have any details to share with you at this time, but the president, and you saw this in his statement yesterday, he talked about the four law enforcement officers. They were heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice. That's what you see when they put on the uniform and the badge every day. They are putting their lives on the line, and they made the ultimate sacrifice. So obviously we pray for them, we pray for their families and others who were injured as a result of this senseless violence. And so we'll continue to keep them in their prayers as it relates to North Carolina tomorrow. I just don't have anything to share at this time. Okay.
I have a question on Elon Musk's China visit. He concluded a surprise visit recently, meeting with senior Communist Party officials and made some deals to work with the Chinese technology companies. Is the White House worried that the U.S. advanced electric vehicle technology will be in China's hands, and would the administration look into the deal if there is a national security?
I'm going to be really careful. Elon Musk is a private citizen. I'm just not going to speak to his travels from here. I'm just not going to speak to it. Okay, good, Adam.
Thanks. I wanted to follow up once more on Gabe's question, because I think the way that you responded leaves maybe the impression that the White House views anti-Semitism as synonymous with the protests as a whole. That's
no,
the only issue
I was very clear
address.
about there's a small number of students who are causing the disruption, and I've been very clear about that. And we have to make sure that we create a safe environment. A safe environment is created for students to learn, for students to be able to go to graduation. I've been very clear, a small number of students.
So maybe the specific question
Yeah,
is,
sure.
what is the White House, how does the White House view the protests themselves, the causes behind them, the frustrations behind them, does the White House view those as legitimate?
So, look, top line here, every American has the right to peacefully protest within the law. That is something that we believe. Seizing buildings, taking over buildings is not peacefully protesting. I think we've been very, very clear about that. That is not peacefully protesting. Students have the right to attend class and feel safe and feel like they are in a safe campus environment. That's what we want to see. And I've also said over and over again, we believe that it is a small percentage of students who are causing this disruption. And they're causing a disruption that really takes away from students' academic experience. Might take away for some their commencement experience, which is supposed to be a really important day for many of these graduates. And so at the same time, we're going to continue to underscore that anti-Semitism should be called out. It is hate speech. And that should not be allowed, not on college campuses, not in communities, not in the political discourse. And so, been very clear about that, and we're going to continue to do so.
In terms of the causes that are driving these protests, the frustration with the war in Gaza, frustration with U.S. support for Israel and its offensive, does the White House view the drivers of these protests as legitimate?
We believe and understand that this is a painful moment for many communities. We get that. I mean, we say that over and over again. That's why the president and senior White House officials here have had multiple conversations with members of those communities to hear from them, to listen to them. And we also believe people have the right, Americans have the right to peacefully protest. That is part of what freedoms here in America, that's what it all means. It is important to be able to peacefully protest within the law. Hate speech should not be allowed. We should condemn that. That's what this administration has always been consistent about and clear about, and we're going to continue to do that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Karine. Some of these encampments, they had matching tents. We're being told that there are professional outside agitators involved. We don't know if they're being paid to sow chaos by domestic folks or foreign entities. Does President Biden want his administration to find out who is funding some of these protests?
What I can say, I cannot speak to the organizations that are being reported that's on the ground. That is not something for me to speak to. That is obviously something that local governments, local officials, I keep saying local government, local officials are going to speak to. They'll have better information on that. What we have said, and I don't think I've iterated that yet from here, is that the DOJ and FBI is going to continue to offer support to universities and colleges in respect to federal laws. So that is something that the DOJ and FBI is doing. As far as local organizations and what is all being reported on the ground, that is something that that local law enforcement certainly is looking into.
And I understand that President Biden historically has spoken very forcefully about anti-Semitism. But this week he's not. He's MIA. Is he that worried about losing the youth vote with these protesters?
I'm going to be mindful. You're talking about youth vote. You're talking about 2024.
Support of young people.
I have to say what I have to say, and just give me a second. So I'm not going to speak about somebody's doorbell. Is that a doorbell?
Yeah, that was an alarm.
An alarm. Okay. All right. And I'll speak more broadly. I can't speak to youth and support and voters. That's not something I can do from here. The president has taken a lot of policy actions here that he knows that young people care about. And a lot of those actions are popular with those young folks, whether it's giving a little bit of breathing room with student debt relief. We made an announcement today, matter of fact, and we are going to continue to do that because we think it's important as families or as an American and you coming out of college and you want to build a family, buy a home, you have the opportunity to do that and not be crushed by student debt. The president understands how important it is to deal with that issue. Climate change, something that young people really, truly care about. One of the crises that the president said he came into having to deal with was the climate change crisis. As the president has taken aggressive action to deal with climate crisis. Look, I can't speak to youth voters or their support. What we're going to do is continue to take actions that we believe helps all Americans and all communities.
You mentioned what he said in 2017 after Charlottesville. He said about Trump's response then, Charlottesville for me was a moment where I thought silence would be complicity.
Yeah.
So how do you explain
Yeah.
his silence this week?
The president has not been silent on this issue when it comes to hate speech, anti-Semitism. He launched the first ever anti-Semitism strategy to counter anti-Semitism, something that no other president did. No other president did.
A school building at an Ivy League campus got taken over.
And we call that out, and we said that is not peacefully protesting. Taking over a building at a university or college is not peacefully protesting. And we've been very clear. Taking more than 100 new actions to deal with anti-Semitism in this administration, no one has ever done that before. Not any other administration has ever done that before. We're going to continue. We're going to continue to do the work, and it's not just here in the White House. We're talking about DOJ. We're talking about Homeland Security, right? We're talking about Department of Education, talking and working with campuses and colleges to deal with this issue. We have seen a uptick in anti-Semitism in the last certainly several months in the past year, and we have to call that out. And it is not okay. It is not okay. Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you. Two quick questions here. You've made the distinction between the president's support for peaceful protest and, say, less than peaceful protest. I'm curious, what is the president's view, what is the view from the White House on some of these college campuses where we've seen the U.S. flag torn down and the Palestinian flag replace it?
What I will say is this. Americans have the right to peacefully protest within the law, and we have to also respect that we cannot disturb campuses in the way of taking over buildings, in the way that we have seen. That is not peacefully protest. It's just not. And look, we have seen some really vile, hateful language used against the Jewish community, Jewish Americans in this country. It is a dangerous time for that community. And we have been very clear about what we need to do to fight that hate, but also condemn that hate. And so we're going to continue to do that. And as it relates to what's happening, obviously the actions that colleges and universities are taking, obviously it's up to them. They're on the ground. But we're going to continue to call that out.
And then zooming out just a little bit here, not all of these protesters have expressed anti-Semitism, but some have. And I'm curious, does the president believe that at perhaps some of these universities that higher education has gone off the rails, that something more fundamental has gone wrong on these college campuses?
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. And you said it in your question to me, it is a small percentage of students who are causing this disruption. And students should feel safe to go to school. They should feel safe to be able to have that all-important academic experience. They should be able to have their commencement and be able to have their families and loved ones show up for them on that important day. And I wouldn't go that far in your question because, as I stated, and you stated, we believe it's a small number of students who are causing this disruption. And if they're going to protest, Americans have the right to do it in a peaceful way within the law. And we're going to continue to call out hateful speech, as we have been. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone.